Hi guys, I'm the Drink Pro. Today I'm drinking Noah's Mill by Willett. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me yet again. Kyle the Drink Pro here with you for another review. Today, we've got an exciting one, Noah's Mill Bourbon. Now, Noah's Mill is a product that is released by the Kentucky bourbon distillers, aka Willett. There's been a version of Noah's Mill out there for a while, but this is the newer bottling. Now, what does that mean? A couple different things. Noah's Mill historically was sourced whiskey, and it was being sourced at 15 years old to be put into the bottles. This bottle has no age statement, and it also says on the back, distilled, aged, and bottled by Willett Distillery. That certainly leads me to believe that Willett is now making their own distillate into Noah's Mill and not using distillate from other sources. Now, there isn't an age statement on this, but what I've heard is it's a mix of 4-year-old and 20-year-old bourbons. If that's the case, they might actually be including some sourced whiskey. I don't know if Willett has 20-year-old barrels that they're putting into Noah's Mill product, especially because this bottle is not terribly expensive. I found this, I believe, at right $50 or $60. That's a pretty consistent price point from what I've heard from other areas. It's also a whiskey that, depending on where you are, is either very available or not available at all. Only very recently have I been able to find this on the shelves here in Indianapolis. People have sort of a cult following of Willett distillate. The Willett Family Reserve bottle I reviewed a little bit back, in the description of that video, I include a link to a discussion of a lot of different sourced products that Willett was releasing as family estate bottles prior to them getting more into making their own distillate. And I believe right now they're not actually doing barrel picks as of today for the 2020 year. That might change, but I know they've drastically reduced their barrel pick program, partly because there's been a whiskey shortage in recent years, whereas in the past we had sort of a glut of high value, high age whiskey selling for low prices because there was less interest and more product. Now, if you like disclosure, Willett is not for you. As I've already said, the bottle has no age statement. But more importantly, I have no idea what the mash bill is on this whiskey. Yes, I know it's bourbon, so there are certain rules you technically have to meet, such as it has to be 51% corn to be considered a bourbon. But other than that, I have no idea what's going into this. The other piece of information that the bottle of Noah's Mill gives us is the proof. It's a very specific proof, 114.3, which is 57.15% alcohol. Now that's an interesting proof point. I'm not sure why that was done. That sure doesn't seem like something you would specifically try to target in. It sounds a lot more like something you would do with large batches, and you throw all of the barrel proof whiskey into a batch and then match it for flavor, and then take a proof measure and put it on the bottle. It's hard to say because, again, they don't disclose hardly anything from Willett. What I will say is this bottle has a nice little symbol of quality on it. It says that the batch quality number is DSP KY78 1941. Whatever that means, it's got a sticker, so it must mean something, right? Let's go ahead and open this bad boy. Another fun fact, I've never drank this before. This is the neck pour from this bottle. Yeah, let's get another one of those. Oh yeah. Oh, there it is. Neck pours are a controversial subject, I think, in bourbon. Some people really believe you have to taste a whiskey after the neck pour, and in fact will insist if they get a sample of a whiskey, it not be the first pour out of the bottle. I think there's a real value in tasting a neck pour and a future pour. So while I will be doing this review on the neck pour of the Noah's Mill, later I will probably do something more informal, either in a Patreon video, a YouTube live video, a Facebook video. Somewhere else I will retaste the Noah's Mill after it's had some time to breathe and see if the flavor notes have changed for better or worse. But I want to give you a review right out of the bottle, so if you go out today and buy a Noah's Mill bottle and open it along with me, you'll know exactly what to expect and that we're on the same page. I actually got to say, I kind of like the fact that they have this non-clear bottle. The unfortunate reality is whiskey doesn't do well with light, and clear bottles let in all the light, so it's not good for seeing the color of the whiskey, but it is good for reducing the light that comes in. Alright, so now I've poured myself a glass. Let's go ahead and smell this, this Willett product. Oh man, okay. So it definitely smells very young. There's a particular smell you get from young new make that really shows up in this glass. It's a sharp, sweet corn smell, almost metallic. But you can tell there's a little bit of age on it. It actually really gives credit to the claim that this is now blending a very old and a very young whiskey. I've got a really clear, metallic, sharp, sweet corn, new makey kind of smell. And then underneath it, there's something warmer, there's more subtle, there's a baking spice note. It's kind of in the background, but I'm definitely getting a clove character. The sweetness isn't just corn, I'm also getting some honey sweetness. Now some of this sharpness may be because this is a neck pour, so people who really ascribe to the, give it a chance to breathe theory would say, you're coming in way too hot, you need to give it a chance to let some of the air into it and let it oxidize a little bit and let it open up a little bit, but the more I do that, the less I'm getting that sharp, sweet corn note, so I think there might be something to that. It's definitely still there, but when I first opened this, it was overwhelming, and now it's definitely taking a back seat. It's sort of a secondary role. I actually get like a pretty floral note as well, maybe like a cherry blossom. I guess I also get a eucalyptus nose. There's an almost minty quality, but the difference between mint and eucalyptus for me is about the sharpness and the roundness of the scent. Eucalyptus has a lot more wide, rounded, herbal mintiness, but it's not real mint. It's not sharp like a peppermint or a spearmint. This is much more rounded and kind of soft, but still has that brightness that I would expect from a eucalyptus. That is kind of fun. The more I keep stirring it, the more I keep smelling it, the more the scents blend together. When I first opened it, it was like two different experiences. And I really thought that was fun because it speaks to the idea that these are two different aged whiskeys blended together. And they might have not been blended so well sitting in the bottle. They might have kind of separated a little bit. I don't know if that's something that would actually happen. It's a fun idea, but it certainly seems to be affecting the nose the more I let it sit out. Because that corn sweetness and the sharpness start to blend together with some of the other notes. And the lightness, the sharpness becomes almost a light characteristic, and the sweetness gives it almost an airy feel to it. Like a sugary air, like a cotton candy or a creme brulee. It's really a creme brulee because there's that creaminess underneath it. But that's pretty subtle. What I'm getting more of is the herbal note. There's these rich undertones of baking spice. The baking spice is getting more and more subtle, though. The herbal note's kind of taking over on the nose. All right, let's go ahead and taste this. Very interesting. It's very different from a lot of bourbons I've had. When you taste this, you can really see why people chase this kind of stuff. It's so different from anything I've ever had. It's very herbal, very minty. There's this sweetness. It's almost like if you've ever had spice drops, which have like a minty sweetness sometimes. It's got that kind of character because the mint and the spice is more prominent than the sweetness. So it's not sharp like a spearmint gum or something. It's much more rounded and wide and herb forward. Going back to the nose after tasting it, I get this wonderful like red hots and mints together. Like you took Altoids and red hots and you mashed them all into a big pan. Initial taste, sweet, honey. More classic bourbon. Mid-palate opens up wide, very herbal, very minty. It's very sweet still. That sweetness remains, but it becomes a background element, almost like a corn syrup or like a sorbitol. There's almost artificial quality to it. It loses all of the honey characteristics in the front end and just becomes this sweet, minty, earthy, woody. Biggest emphasis on the mint and the herb. The wood is very subtle underneath. Maybe like fresh cut grass. Oh, it's like sweet grass. Or lemongrass. There's a very subtle lemon zest note, early to mid palate. That's the only thing I could really call citrus. Mostly sweet and herbal. I want to pull out more specific notes, but I'm kind of running out of language because I don't often run into something this minty. So mint is something I don't have a lot of words for. I've basically got spearmint, peppermint, maybe eucalyptus, depending on how you talk about it. I'm getting some berry notes now. That I sit there with that sweetness. I talk so much about the mint, there may be like an elderberry or like a blueberry. This keeps opening up and changing and really is a good pour. I gotta say, the neck pour on this is really fantastic. I definitely think it's something that I want to explore some more. I want to let this open up and see how I feel about it. I'm just going to add a quick drop of water to it. I added the water off camera, but I just want to see what happens when I add just 1 or 2 drops. I think I added 2 drops to this. The mint becomes much quieter and the sweetness of the caramel really comes forward. I was getting this sharp, syrupy sweetness that was like corn syrup, and then it was sort of like a creme brulee note. The creme brulee is coming back to the forefront. The mint's taking a back seat on the nose. Man, that's so odd. The sweetness hits right away, but then immediately following it, you get that herbal, herbaceous, minty, interesting quality. It doesn't open up that much with water. Not that much has changed, honestly, but it's a fantastic pour. I gotta say, for $60, it's definitely worth buying, if for no other reason, because it's so much unlike anything I've ever had before. It's a buy from me. I'm gonna really enjoy seeing how this bottle opens up and changes over time. But honestly, right now in the neck pour, I freaking love what it's doing because it's so unique and interesting. I love that minty forwardness, the eucalyptus, the sweetness, the creme brulee, all of it coming together at once. And honestly, the finish is very soft and quiet for me, but I don't mind that because there's so much of a journey in the early and mid palate. When you need a finish is when it builds and builds and builds and starts quietly and crescendos. But here, right out of the gate, it's herbal and minty and sweet and so much going on. So having a kind of quiet finish is actually sort of a good thing, so it's not too overwhelming. This is still a pour you can come back to again and again and not feel like you're overindulging. So I'm going to keep enjoying this. You all keep drinking like professionals. Cheers.